Before I went into service, uh, during the Depression days, uh, like any other town, everybody was hurting. Jobs were scarce and everything else. There's no entertainment. Nobody had money. But we had a bunch of guys who graduated from Verona High School. In fact, at Verona High School, we didn't have enough guys to make up any teams. We had enough guys to make up a soccer team and a basketball team. Football wasn't in the program yet. It had to start in Verona. But we used to hang out and sit on where the Verona Police Department is now. There used to be 3 benches there. There's only 1 left. And we would sit there and talk baseball and had nothing else to do. You know, you had a quarter in your pocket, you had a lot of money. So we decided one time, look, let's start playing a little bit of baseball. So we did. We didn't have the uniforms or anything. We just had old clothes. And we started a team called the Railroad AC. And we started a book team. There was only one field in Verona, that baseball team field in Verona at the time, and that was being used at Everett Field by the Verona Junior Order, which is that had been there for years. These are older men, and they would play there every Saturday with independent baseball, and there was no stands or anything. You just sat there with a chair. And in those days, you couldn't charge or anything. What they would do is get somebody to pass a hat around, a baseball hat around, and whatever went into the hat, that's what you got, you know. So we went out as a Railroad OC. We started to play. We started to play pretty good. And then we said, we better play some better teams. And we got a hold of a bunch of old uniforms. I think they were all old high school uniforms that were never used. So we got dressed up pretty good. Then we said, look, we better change our name. So the 6 of us got together, myself, Al Sandine, Archie Sandine, Bill Freeman, Tip O'Neill, and Artie Chair. And we got a hold of a young lawyer by the name of Bill Camaratta. And we said, look, we want to form a club here called the Verona Athletic Club, but we need a charter. So he took care of it. We got a charter from Trenton, and we were officially known as the Verona AC. Now, there was no... In town, you couldn't play ball. The churches wouldn't allow baseball on Sundays. So we had to get in the cars. If whoever had a car, gasoline was 18 cents a gallon. And we'd all pile in the cars and go up to Wayne, and we'd go up to Pompton, wherever. In Pompton Avenue, the 23 was only a black road going north and a black road going south. But you were allowed to swim in the river up near Edmund's Bakery now in Singak, and the people would come up from Newark, and you would get stuck in traffic there for hours. So we'd leave at 11 o'clock in the morning to play a ball game up in Passaic at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But we managed to make a few dollars because we got enough to buy the baseballs at bats with. And we were lucky. There was a sports store in Montclair, and the owner lived in Verona. Jacobson's sports store, and he gave us a line of credit. So we were able to have the equipment we needed. But what happened was that we finally challenged the older men because we wanted Everett Field. The high school field was not used. There's no Sunday baseball. And we beat them. We beat them. So we kept about 2 or 3 of our guys stayed and joined our team. Then we became one real strong semi-professional team. And we challenged the Board of Education for the use of the field, and finally they let us use the field only if the game started after 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. But in the meantime, we were playing independent ball, and we played teams like the House of David and the Pittsburgh Black Giants. And the people were coming out. There was nothing else more that they could do. There was no television. There was no ball games on radio. What you had to go see was the local team. But Montclair had the same problem. Cole had the same problem. So somebody, Bill Madden from Montclair, and some guy in Cole started a new league called the Essex County Baseball League. And they asked us to join it, which we did. And it became a very, very, very strong semi-professional team. And we found out after the first year that Colville was the first team who started to pay some of the ball players to come in. These were ball players. There weren't many minor leagues left during the Depression, and some of these ball players were coming home, and they were getting a few dollars for playing. So we decided we'd better do the same thing. So we had a manager by the name of Frank Wiley. He was terrific. We had a young kid that was pitching for Fordham University, came up, and he played for us for 2 years. And he was eventually signed by the New York Yankees and stayed with the Yankees after he graduated from Fordham. He won 5 World Series games for the Yankees. Hank Barrowe was his name. And we had Jackie Ty from Verona. He signed as a catcher. He was playing catcher for Colville. He wound up playing for Detroit Tigers. He wound up being a manager. And you had Billy Johnson from the Montclair team, played 9 years with the Yankees at third base. So we were doing great. Finally, the Board of Education put a stand up with a roof on the third base line, and we could charge. And they had the bleacher seats on the right-hand side. Otherwise, Al Sandine would, in the 5th inning or 6th inning, would walk around the teams, people around the outfield, everywhere they are, and collect what he could in the hat. And in those days, you had to pay. We kept 60% and gave 40% for the visiting team. So that's you're playing, you know. And I used to get $2 or $3 a ball game, which was a lot of money in those days. The Essex County Hospital had a tremendous team. And they would play on Saturday afternoons and Wednesday afternoons. But what they did, a lot of these ball players who were coming back from the leagues got jobs as attendants for taking care of the patients up at Overbrook. It was called Overbrook Hospital. So I played with them for 2 years also. But in 37 and 38, all during this time I was playing my trombone. I was making a few extra dollars playing on the local bands. So I finally at 37 I said I better quit this, because my younger brother, even when he was in high school, when he was 16 years old, I knew he was going to be something special. He played trumpet like nobody else did. He was a terrific first trumpet player. And the story there is that my father would raise enough money for 25 cents for every 2 weeks to have a guy come in and teach my brother Tootie a violin. And Tootie hated the violin. He got a hold of a trumpet. Now, when we lived on Martin Road, the end of our property, there was a brook about 4 feet wide that separated us from the houses on Pompton Avenue. In Pompton Avenue, in that area, were 5 or 6 black teens. And wonderful people, wonderful guys. We all went to school together. But Tootie, Pop had built a nice chicken coop. So Tootie would sneak into the chicken coop and practice trumpet, because Mr. Brown, who lived in Backness, was a trumpet player, a cornet player in his old days with a circus band. So he started Tootie on the basics, and he learned. We used to cut lawns and everything it was to get a half a buck and to take a lesson on the trombone or the trumpet. But he got good. So, well, I used to hang around at the Meadowbrook. The big bands were starting to play there. I got to know Frank Deere very, very well. And one night I was telling Frank Deere, I got a kid brother who's played terrific. He says, bring him up here, bring him up here. We went up there on a Sunday night, and Tootie played with the band for an hour. And Frank Deere came down and he says, this kid's going places. He said, but this is a union band. He says, I'll get him in the Newark Union next week. He got into the Local 16 in Newark and started his career. But when he graduated high school, I said, you can't stay in town. You got to go get some instruction. He got a semi-scholarship for Juilliard School of Music. He was there for 2 years, and he studied arrangements, composition, and conducting, and he played at night with the big bands. He played with the Red Normal Band, he played with the Charlie Barnett Band, and he finally wound up playing with the Jimmy Dorsey Band. But he was, at 19 years old, he was playing with Jimmy Dorsey and the Benny Goodman bands, a young kid from Verona. You know, from then on, he just became a great arranger, the Bing Crosby Show, and he did the Jackie Gleason had a show, and he was with Jackie Gleason on the 20 Grand Cigarette Show. Well, anyway, he became a giant in the business as a musical director for Decca Records and a musical director for London Records. In the meantime, Bill he put himself through school with an 8-piece orchestra, and he became a lawyer, and he opened up an office in Montclair, and he decided to run for politics. And Verona in those days was strictly a Republican town, but he ran as a Democrat and almost won. And Mayor Slayback came over and talked to him. He said, "You got to become a Republican," which he did. And from then on, they got together. He joined the Republican Party, became very active in it, and he wound up serving on the council. He wound up working as the town judge for years. He wound up being the town attorney. They used to call him Mr. Verona. And eventually he was appointed to the Superior Court judge by Governor Hughes. And he sat down there for 20 years, and he was considered one of the top judges. But the family did well. We stayed in Verona. We came here in the early 20s. I believe it was 21, maybe 1922. And the sisters all married, and the 2 older brothers all married. In 1938, I was playing pretty good trombone, so I took my test for the local 802 New York Musicians Union, and I passed the test. So I started to play with some of the New York bands. And in 1940, it looked like I was going to go on the road with the Joe Venuti Band and the Andrews Sisters. But in 1940, Congress passed a law for the draft law. You had to take 1 year minimum training. And believe it or not, they had a lottery. You had to have a number. And Bill got the number 148, which was the first number out, but he couldn't go because he wasn't in good health at the time. So I got a call backstage to come home. So I came home. He said, "The draft board's looking for you." So I came home and I enlisted. I think I was one of the first guys to leave town. And at that time, you could pick out what kind of service you wanted to get into, the Navy, Army, whatever. So I said, "No, I'll go in the Army. It's only for a year." So but I would like to go join a band. So after 4 weeks of training with the infantry, I was transferred to the 104th Combat Engineers out of Teaneck, New Jersey. And I was going to be discharged December 10th. We were on the way home from the maneuvers, and you know what happened on December 8th. So altogether, I was in the service for 5 years and 15 days. But I came home, and I was playing real good. As you know, I built this Army band and built a tremendous orchestra up there. We did very well. But I got home when I married a beautiful girl who was in a WAC uniform. We had a child, and I came home from service, and I had an offer to go on the road with Shorty Chirac Orchestra from New York. So I went with him, but after 3 weeks I said I better come home. Because she had the baby. And at that same time, coming out of the service, the music was changing. The big bands were starting to the big band era was starting to fold up. So I came home, and my brother called me from London. He said, "You stay where you are." He said, "I'm coming home. We're starting a new record company. I got a job for you." And that's how I got into the record company. And I was with London Records for 5 years with sales and promotion. Then I went 12 years with London Records, with Capitol Records. And I ran the music publishing firms for Capitol Records for 12 years. Then I spent 3 years with the Walt Disney firm for the same job. But there again, I was doing a lot of traveling, going back and forth. There were California companies. There was too much traveling. So I decided to get a job home, which I did. And I worked for the county, Essex County, for 21 years. And I finally retired at 83 years old. But we lived in Verona on Chestnut Road for 45 years and raised the 4 children. And I always came back to Verona. No matter where I went, we always came back to Verona. I loved it here. But I turned the ripe old age. I hope to stay here. 96 is a great age.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah. I think I got a couple of more good years, I hope. But that's, you know, this is your life story. But I'm very proud of my two brothers. They did tremendously well.
And so did you.
Well, I did all right. I hope so. You know, there's one thing I'd like to say though. We had in the Verona AC, I'm the last surviving founder of the Verona AC, and I know that we had Russ Paxton, one of the guys, had the scorebooks from all those games. We had a banner, and we had trophies. I wonder if they're still around. I would love to get them, and if they are, I would clean them up and put them in the community center and in a glass cage and say, look, this is what it was in the Depression days, and this is what we tried to do for the people of Verona at the time. We supplied some pretty good entertainment for them at that time. Anybody's got any memorabilia, I would love to have it. And I thank you for coming over here.